The answer's in your question, which is really because Africa is around about 15 to 18% of the global population, and the continent is only 3.8% of global emissions. It has every right and an economic and moral case to develop its own resources. All of the studies that have been published recently, for example, the IEA's current policy scenario, indicate that oil demand may even increase to 2050, but the demand that is being produced, met in the future, will be produced at progressively lower emissions. So Namibia, when it starts producing oil from 2029 onwards, will be producing oil at emissions lower than most countries have in the entire history of the world. Yes, the Guyana is really interesting because the first FID was actually within 2 years of discovery, but the first production was in 4 years. Namibia, the expectation is it's 4.5 years from discovery to FID in the case of Venus. Very acceptable. The water depth is over 2 times as deep as Guyana. The distance from shore is over 2 times as well. You also have a lot more gas in the case of Namibia. So Venus achieving FID this year would be a great achievement. What is important, though, is to recognize the difference between Guyana and Namibia. Guyana is a single operator where one operator is controlling the whole process. Namibia is multi-operator. And from 2027 onwards, you're likely to see a big scale-up of activity. Shell, possibly, Chevron, possibly, Rhino, definitely, Total with Galp, definitely, possibly onshore with Recon Africa. So the view we have is that to really scale up and get multiple FIDs, Namibia must increase the amount, the quality and the structure of its human resources to process all the field development plans, whilst at the same time making sure that the country is exploring the Walvis Bay Basin, as we've had announcements quite recently from the likes of Total and BP about farm-ins into that area. The Namibian discoveries are quite gassy, potentially up to 25-30% in some places. So the real question is, what is the trade-off between Namibia re-injecting the gas to maximize oil production and creating a gas market? So some gas markets are quite easy to create. Floating LNG is one option. Others take more time. Piped gas to shore, especially when you have deep water offshore. However, there's a few things that Namibia can think about. Floating LNG is an obvious one. Fast-tracking the Recon discoveries, which are onshore already, thinking about integrating oil and gas infrastructure somewhere around the Galp, Rhino, Kudu area. All of those are very possible. But at the same time, there's one last bit of gas we mustn't forget, which is that Namibia needs gas to power. Because at the moment it's dependent on hydro resources from declining electricity production economies, Zambia, Zimbabwe, dependent on South Africa, which has another power cliff looming from 2030, and it's only really got its own Ruacana option and perhaps some from Angola. So gas to power, probably importing in the short term for Namibia, makes sense because that promotes energy security and it also promotes the energy-led industrialization that will follow from the oil production. Well, the first point is nobody knows what it looks like, because if you look at, say, Norway in 1970, you had a single discovery. The UK, where I'm from originally, 1974, you didn't have production. That started the next year. But the UK, by the late 90s, had nearly 3 million a day of oil with a lot of gas on top. So you have scenarios, you have visions that can be implemented, but the most important thing is to get the early deals done quickly so the industry gets confidence and you develop a very large and robust structure on the government side to implement and execute these deals quickly. The likelihood is the world still needs a lot of oil in 2050. It's very probable the world still needs a lot of oil in 2060 or even 2070. So the main thing for Namibia to do is execute the first deal as fast as possible, Venus, and then execute the next deals as fast as possible. Because once you've done that, you can broaden and deepen your activity. And we must remember that so far the focus has been on the Orange Basin, but now Recon Africa are going to be testing onshore, and the Walvis Basin exploration wells will probably start from about 2028. So exciting times lie ahead for Namibia. And really the crucial challenge is just about the human resources and the government architecture to develop as fast as possible.